I grew up in a country that always spoke so loudly about freedom, yet it never taught me how to feel it. The freedom I knew was small, shrunken, the freedom to stay quiet so I wouldn't be hit, to hide my pain so I wouldn't trouble anyone, to retreat into a corner and wait for the world to pass me by without hurt me again. From a young age, I learned that a woman's voice did not count for much, and as I grew older, I realized it wasn't only my voice that was silenced. I watched black people being persecuted as if breathing were a crime. The poor treated as if they were invisible. Gay men and women driven out of their jobs and their lives, hunted by the government as though they were enemies of their own country. All of it so wrong, so painfully wrong. And still something inside me insisted that love in this country meant wishing it could become something better. I never wanted flags or parties or any of that, but deep down, I wanted to change something, even if it was only a gesture, a choice, a refusal to keep the silence I had been taught to obey. I wanted to embrace people who had never been taught by love. Perhaps because I too had been left behind by a system that promised freedom and dignity. And perhaps that is why, only because of that, I still believe it might one day become more human than it ever was with me. After the war, there was an oppressive atmosphere. Women lost their jobs, small freedoms, and dreams. They sent women back home, but I never had a home to return to, only a future to pursue, even if they didn't want to let me in. The different way the government treated citizens bothered me a lot. In fact, it sounded inhumane and unfair. The world said I was just a lost girl, but I had a new name to discover. And a pain that no one saw. A silent pain that I carried with me in every step. I learned early on to smile while my body protests. Posing becomes my armor, and courage my shield. That's how the lost girl began to become the woman the world would remember. But there were still shadows, corridors that whispered, gazes that weighed heavily, and a pain that no one could touch. Each test was a silent trial, every glance an assessment no one saw. I learned to protect myself while learning to exist in front of the lens. In 1948, I made my first appearance in a professional film, Escuda Hu, Escuda Rei, produced by Fox Film Corporation. I played a small supporting role, Betty, and most of my scenes were ultimately cut from the final edit, leaving my presence almost imperceptible on the screen. Still, I remember that set clearly. It was my first real encounter with a professional film set, where I began to learn discipline, posture, diction, and how to work in front of the camera. That experience also marked my first direct contact with Fox. A small step perhaps, but one that laid the foundation for everything that followed. Even then, I knew that growing as an actress would require patience, resilience, and dedication, no matter how small the role or how fleeting the screen time. My first pay contract was $125 a week for 6 months. Later, it rose to $150. Still, it was barely enough for rent, food, cosmetics. I was never materialistic. I dreamed not of Jews, mansions, or servants, only of stability and of being seen. Never in my mind did dishonest ideas take shape like deceiving rich men for money. There were many who tried, but my focus was work and respect. I was extremely disciplined. I didn't have a coach yet. I attended the Fox Acting School, studying diction, posture, singing, and even behavioral psychology to understand the emotions of the characters. My mother was still trapped in her shadows. I was afraid of repeating her story, but I also knew that things could be different. I could build my own path, even if alone. Around 1948, I went out to dinner with a very influential businessman. I will call him Hey J, an influential executive of the time, a very rich and married man. At that dinner, he gave me a gift, a box. I thanked him, but I didn't open it until I got home. Diamonds. Diamonds last forever, but what truly lasts forever is what is eternal. Even in the face of wealth and power, I remained true to my virtues. I didn't seek comfort in rich men or arranged marriages. What I wanted was respect, recognition, and my own career. I even appraised the diamond necklace, and it cost $10,000 in 1948, perhaps around $150,000 nowadays. It was a considerable amount, a high price for a girl who counted pennies to save on food and pay the rent. I didn't sell the necklace. I returned it 3 months later. And of course, at first, this gesture was seen as an affront, a disrespect. But that same gentleman a year later told me, "You are the true, rare gem. Thank you so much for being honest with me." In December 1948, I met Johnny Hyde at a party. I was introduced to him by colleagues from the studio. Johnny Hyde became my protector, friend, manager, and mentor. He helped me renegotiate contracts with Fox. He presented opportunities for roles and auditions. He encouraged a strategic change in my image, including suggestions for facial harmonization that would only be implemented in 1950. He proposed marriage several times, promising me a financially stable life, but I refused then all. I maintained my independence and virtue. Johnny believed in me. He opened the doors that seemed impossible for me. But it wasn't a shortcut in my life. I learned to say no to comfort and security when they came at a price I couldn't pay: my integrity. Johnny Hyde passed away in 1950. I was overcome with profound sadness. When Johnny was gone, I lost a friend and a guardian, but I didn't lose myself. Life went on, and my path was still ahead of me. I continued counting money, living austerely, and focused on my career. I remember visiting my mother in the hospital. My mother was still far away. Her eyes were distant, somewhere beyond my reach, and I feared the same fate. I told her my name would now be Marilyn Monroe, that I might become an actress in the cinema, but there was no change in her face. I thought, she's gone. She no longer remembers who I am. Would she ever know Marilyn Monroe? As I turned to leave, she whispered, "Do not forget your coat, Norma Jean. It's cold outside." I broke into tears. I felt guilty for leaving her there and going on. At the end of the day, I returned to the simple room. The room didn't change. I managed to have a small meal. The pain didn't disappear, but something inside me began to blossom. I was still Norma Jean, but I was also beginning to be Marilyn Monroe. I learned that strength is not the absence of pain. It's knowing how to smile even when the body and the world say no. I learned it early on that the world wants you to be a symbol. I decided I would be my own symbol, not just the smiling blonde, not just the lost girl, but the woman I am inside.